How's everybody doing? Welcome to the J. Aruga Show, the first conservative podcast in the Philippines, protecting the Filipino family from woke ideology. Our next guest is a Catholic content creator. He has interviewed many Catholic speakers, authors, converts, priests. He hosted debates in his channel. Definitely one of the Catholic channels you should be subscribed to in the internet. Everyone, please welcome Kyle Whittington. Kyle, thanks for accepting my invite. How are
Of
you
course.
doing?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jay. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Things are a little hectic. Like I mentioned before this formally started, pray for my family because I don't know when this is gonna go public.
Mm, mm.
But on August 31st, we're having our fifth kid. So as of the time of this recording, that's tomorrow. So depending on when you publish this, it's like probably we've got a newborn in the family. But yeah, no, it's a little hectic, but it's a good time, constant party.
Congratulations. Congratulations on
Thank
the
you.
new baby. Hey, how's everything on your side of the planet, aside from the baby? What's going on in the US?
Well, so what's going on in the U.S.? The biggest hubbub is going to be our presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Republican Party is trying to pick out a nominee to go up against Joe Biden. So that's something that everybody is constantly talking about in the church.
Mm.
We've got I don't know, like squabbles, but
Of course. Yeah.
I think that there's a really cool resurgence going on, especially online, especially with Catholic apologetics. More people are getting into it. People are starting to learn that like, hey, you don't actually have to be a Trent Horn or a
Mm.
Scott Hahn to get into this. Like, there's actually
Yeah.
plenty of
Yeah.
room for mere mortals, normal people to get into
Like us.
this. Exactly, because I don't know what your education level is, but like me, I never finished college. I
Mm.
never finished a university degree or anything like that. I have a high school diploma.
Mm.
And yet, like, hey, you can do it. The internet is a wonderful resource. It's a wonderful tool. And, it's if you have questions, there are answers, and you just have to go and find them.
Yeah, that's one thing I changed my mind on. Before I thought that everyone should finish college, but now I heard about people who had a high school diploma and he who did well in life and went big. So I changed my mind on that. Uh, Almost recently when I hear commentators and like yourself who are doing well even
Yeah.
uh, without a college degree. And yeah, I just want to tell you that I was made aware of your YouTube channel when I interviewed Avelina Balestri. I was
Oh,
I was searching for an interview of her to steal your questions. Just kidding.
hey, I do it too. I do it too. There's no shame in that.
No, I wanted to know her background before I interview her.
Of
So
course.
I was pointed to your channel. I'm really impressed the way you handled the interview because I can relate. You came prepared. You read her book, which is also what I do when I interview an author. So I thought I'd like to meet you, but I parked it for a while. Then I was watching Pints with the Aquinas. I remember Matt Frad reading your comment or question to his guest. Then I was trying to remember where did I hear that name, Kyle Whittington. Then I said, "Oh
Yep.
yeah, he's the guy who interviewed Avelina." So I took the chance. I I sent you a comment in one of your posts. So
Hmm.
here you are.
Yep. Yeah. No. Yeah. And the other thing that you might be familiar with me from, so I actually work for Trent Horn. So
Oh,
if you ever
wow.
comment on any of the Council of Trent videos
Mm, mm,
and you get a reply, chances are that's me that's actually replying to you. But so that's
wow.
the other thing that I'm involved with.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay, let's start by talking about your conversion story. I used to be an atheist, and there's a bit of your journey from,
Hmm.
let's say, in my journey as an atheist to being a Catholic, I first become intellectually convinced to Catholicism. Then, after that, it took a while before I became a fully practicing Catholic. So there's a jump from just being intellectually convinced, the answers to the questions, but you're not yet. spiritually there.
Mhm.
It's just like it took a bit of time from being intellectually convinced to becoming fully convinced, where you confess regularly to a priest, and you only do communions when you don't have mortal sins. So
Right.
yeah. So how about you? You're a convert. What's your faith background before you become Catholic, and what existential moment did the Holy Spirit lead you to become Catholic?
Well, this is probably going to be the least inspiring story that you've ever heard. But so a background where I grew
Okay.
up. The state where I grew up, and you're if you're not familiar with U.S. geography, that's fine.
Mm,
But the state that I grew up in is called Oklahoma. It's the state that's
mm,
shaped like a finger pointing, and I
mm,
grew up
mm.
about right there in the state.
Okay.
Which culturally speaking, that's a very Protestant area. It's the Baptist Seventh
Mm,
Day Adventists who are going to be like the primary religious group in that area. Not a lot of Catholics at all. In fact, in my town of only about 600 people, we only had one Catholic family.
ooh,
So
wow.
growing up, I didn't have an understanding of Catholicism at all. I knew that my opinions were vaguely negative, but if somebody ever took me to task for it, I could never really give you any good reasons why, just because it just wasn't a topic that came up a lot.
Mm,
Now, whenever I was 16, though, I had, I'd had pretty decent grades and whatnot, and I got selected to go on like a student ambassador program to Europe. And we started in France, went all through Italy, and we ended in Greece.
mm.
And so this was actually my first encounter ever stepping foot in a Catholic church. And the first Catholic church I ever stepped foot in was Notre Dame in Paris.
Wow.
um, yeah.
It's
So,
already a
which of
big
course,
deal.
yeah. Well, so I mean, hopefully the restoration goes fine,
Yeah.
but I encountered this beauty. I knew that it was a church and whatnot, but I didn't really understand anything that was going on. But it was still a gorgeous
Mm,
church, and hopefully the restorations preserve that. But so
mm,
anyway, and went through some churches too, throughout Italy, and then I went to Vatican City
mm.
as a tourist,
Yeah, you're still
not a
not Catholic.
pilgrim.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was familiar with a lot of Renaissance art, so I was still just blown away by the beauty that was there, and that was kind
Mm,
of a pretty amazing experience. But I was just a Protestant. It
mm,
was also whenever I was in Rome that I had my first I had my first encounter with a rosary. Now, that one Catholic family, and this will become relevant in
mm.
the story later. That one
Okay.
Catholic family had a daughter that was about my age,
Mm.
and whenever I was going to Rome, knowing that she was Catholic, I was like, "Hey, is there anything that you'd like for me to pick up for you while I'm in Rome, while I'm in Vatican?" And she said, "Ooh, if you could find me a rosary, that would be amazing." So, okay, sure, I'll find a rosary. And I was like, "What's a rosary though? Like, can you tell me what that is?" And she's like, "Yeah," and she explained it. She explained the whole thing, except I was so stupid that the only thing that I caught on to was beads. So the way that I thought of it was, okay, if I find something with beads in Rome, it's probably a rosary. So
You,
sure
you,
enough, if you've ever been to Rome, you might be familiar with the vendors that are on the street and whatnot. I
uh-huh.
saw the little circular plastic container
Mm.
with the rosaries that smell like roses.
Wow.
Um, and I found one of those. I picked it up and yeah, I bought it. It was like €3, something like that. And whenever I got back to the hotel room, I pulled it out and I was just like, "Oh man, I was supposed to get her a rosary, not this silly looking necklace." And because I had no idea. And thankfully, the guy that
Was
I
it
had as a
really a
roommate at the
rosary that you got?
yes, yeah, actually, so my I had a Hispanic roommate at the time, and he
Okay.
he looked at me like I was stupid, and he was just like, "That is a rosary, dude." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, all right, well, I guess that's cool."
Because the
So
worst case is you could have gotten her a Buddha bead.
oh
Buddha
yeah,
beads. Yeah.
oh yeah, no, it's that would have been really bad. But it was a canister that had a picture of Pope Benedict XVI on it. So
Okay, okay.
yeah, it was
You're
a,
on
it
the
was a
right
pretty
track.
safe
Yeah.
bet. Yeah, exactly. And I knew who the Pope was, so
Okay. Okay.
couldn't tell you what his job was, but I knew who he was. But so anyway, that I come back and I have to deliver this rosary to this girl. Well, we had a Christian rock concert going on at the time, and her church was hosting it. And I figured, hey, what a better time to deliver this to her than at this concert. Cool.
Mm.
So we go to the concert, and it's a good time. And then one of the youth leaders, she comes up and she says, hey, you should come join us sometime. And I say, yeah, sure, of course.
Mm.
Externally, internally, I'm just like, absolutely not. This is a Catholic church. Y'all are going to hell. Y'all are crazy. I'm not coming back here. You couldn't pay me to step foot in that church because I had no idea.
Yes.
Okay. So that was during the summer. So the school year starts up.
Mm.
This is my junior year in high school, so 11th grade. And I this cute girl at the time, she invited me to come to church. And of course, I'm not like, nope, not going. I'm not gonna go.
Is she the same girl?
Yeah, same girl. And which spoiler alert, this isn't the woman that's now my wife.
Yeah.
This cute girl, like we didn't date, we didn't get married. Like she's married, has 3 kids, and I'm married to some.
Okay.
We went complete separate ways. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny telling the story in front of my wife, and it's just like, yeah, I met this cute girl, and then they kind of look at my wife, is like, oh, is that her? And I'm just, oh, what? No, not her.
Okay.
But yeah, so back to the story a little bit. They invite me to church, and I'm just like, no, that's a Catholic church. I've got a very open mind. I consider myself a world traveler, of course, at this point. But no, I'm not. I have to stick to my convictions, and I if I go to this church, I fear for my soul. But then, it was either her or it was somebody else in our group of friends said something that just kind of changed everything, and I'll never forget it. They just looked at me and they said, Kyle, there's going to be free pizza there. And that was it. I was sold. I was just like, okay, yeah, no, if there's going to be free pizza there, yeah, I'll show up. So cute girl, promise of free pizza. And that's what got me to go to my first mass. And yeah, which of course, whenever I got there and had my first encounter with the mass, the priest at the time was very, very, very geared towards teenagers. He knew how to speak on topics that teenagers cared about. And for the very first time, I had attended something, a religious ritual, religious service. I don't like that word. That captivated my attention from start to finish. And especially whenever we got to the consecration of the Eucharist, I was just like, whoa, okay, hold on. What's going on here? And because one of my friends explained, like, hey, you're not Catholic. Do not go up there. You can't receive communion. So that, I was like, well, why is that the case? And he's like, I'll explain it later. And they explained, like, we believe that this is the actual body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, which to me, like, as a Protestant, that's just blowing my mind. It's just like, that sounds a little ridiculous. I don't know how you get that, but let's go get some free pizza. So, but because it was fun, there was a great group there, and I just kept coming back. And there was 2 separate youth group encounters there. So before mass, which it was just, we separated out men and women, and that gave me a space to where I could ask questions about the faith. And my objections to Catholicism were super low. Like, you call priests father, you think that you have to pray through somebody to get to God. And at the time, I thought that these were very, like, airtight and solid objections. And now looking back on it, it's like, this is something that you can just get from a pamphlet. Like, somebody just gives you a pamphlet and just knocks all those to pieces.
Yeah.
And
during the time, there's already the internet, Google. What year is this when did this
yeah, so this is going to be 2000. Let's see here. This was the beginning of my junior year, so this is the beginning of 2008.
Okay.
So 2008, I didn't have a smartphone, but yeah, I had full access to the internet. I knew how to look things up, but I was just mostly still in the mode of just asking questions and getting to know through people and whatnot. But they're asking me questions, and that the questions are satisfactory. But I kind of had this conviction in the back of my mind, is like, I must remain Protestant for some reason. And eventually, I keep going back. And at one point, I asked the cute girl's older brother, who became my RCIA sponsor. He's technically my godfather and my confirmation sponsor, because I wasn't baptized at the time.
Mm.
And I said, "So, what does it take to become Catholic?" He's like, "Well, you're gonna have to start going on Sunday mornings." And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 I'm not doing that. Not doing that. I'm an evenings only guy. I'm not waking up on a Sunday." But but I kept toying with the idea. I was like, "Well, maybe I should become Catholic. This does seem to be
Mm.
good, true, and beautiful." But the big argument that like kind of convicted me was from history, because
Mm.
in my town of 600 people, we had 10 different types of Protestant churches,
Mm.
and which is just ridiculous. It's like town of 600 people should have like maybe one church, maybe two churches. If this were a Catholic town, we might have like the Spanish church and the English church.
Mm.
But like that's the only reason why you would have more than one. Uh, so I was just like, well, I want the original one. I want the original church.
Mm.
And with my high school education at the time, like that was very clearly the Catholic Church. The Baptists couldn't be found,
Mm.
prior to the Protestant Revolution.
Mm.
And at this time, the Eastern Orthodox didn't even enter the equation. In fact, they didn't enter the equation for me until about 5 years ago. And at that
Mm.
point, that I had to deal with that separately. But
Mm.
um, so I am running out of excuses, but like I've just kind of, nah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But eventually I was watching some stand-up comedian, and this was
Mm.
actually the second time that I'd even seen his special, but this was when the moment that that I was I knew that I was convicted, because
Mm.
in that he made a priest joke insinuating that, oh, priests and little boys and whatnot.
Mm.
And while I don't remember it being particularly funny the first time I watched it, this time whenever I saw it, I was offended. And
Mm.
I turned off the TV. And as a teenager, I turned off the TV and went to go wash dishes.
Mm.
That's how offended about it I was. It's like,
Mm.
I'd rather do chores than watch this garbage.
Mm.
And then as I was walking away, I realized, oh, I I'm cooked.
Yeah.
I'm done. I have to, whether I want to admit it or not, I have already converted in my heart. And now it's time to
Wow.
make it official.
Praise God.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, telling my mom was fun because, like I said, the kind of anti-Catholic sentiments in the family. And whenever I told her that I wanted to be Catholic, you would have thought I was coming out of the closet. She was just like, okay, all right, we'll get through this. We'll get through this. Well, at least you're not becoming a Mormon. And yeah. So, but anyway, I entered RCIA. It was a pretty smooth ride, pretty smooth process. I got the book Catholicism for Dummies, and I was reading. Asking or getting answers from there. And in the Easter Vigil of 2010, I was baptized, confirmed, first communion, all same day.
The
And
grand slam. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's whenever I got the fully received into the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great story. Uh, what I took from your story is what I'll tell the listeners of this show who host Catholic gatherings always have free pizza.
Yeah.
Always have
Yeah.
free pizza. Please.
Yeah.
No, it
Yeah.
just
I don't know if you've heard this before, but we've got a saying, the quickest way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
yes,
So
yes. I heard that.
yeah. So
Anyway,
that
that's a good story. And somewhat seriously, the other takeaway that I get aside from the free pizza is you seem to start being converted by the beauty of the images that you see in Rome, in France.
yeah.
And this is one of the most what do you call this? They pretty neglected part of the three transcendentals. Like we talk about, we always talk about truth, goodness, but the beauty is sometimes neglected. And I remember Bishop Barron talking to Dr. William Lane Craig, and this concept of beauty seems a bit foreign to the concept of beauty being used to evangelize is a bit
Mm-hmm.
foreign to Dr. Craig at that time when he talked to Bishop Barron. And sometimes as a Catholic, we often neglect that the churches, it moves the heart. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one
Yeah.
takeaway. Yep. Go
You
ahead.
know, and you'll often get especially a lot of the Protestants and even atheists will criticize the Catholic Church for having all these beautiful things, especially in
Mm.
Rome. You know, it's like, oh, sell the Vatican to feed the poor, which is ridiculous because it's just like,
Mhm.
well, out of any non-government organization, we provide more charity than literally anybody
Yes.
else,
Yes.
and it's not particularly close. Like, no, the runner-up is not, it's not a close second.
Mhm. Mm.
um but whenever you hear that, Dorothy Day has a wonderful line, and she says, "If if we were to sell all the treasures, all the beauty out of the church, then where would the poor encounter beauty?
Mm.
You know, to get into St. Peter's Basilica, you don't need a ticket. You know, the
Mm.
poor of Rome can walk in whenever they please. You know, you don't have to pay to get in there, and they can truly encounter, you know, some of the most beautiful things. I mean, if you've ever been to St. Peter's, you know, it's so big, and knowing that that was done without any power tools, it was done without any cranes or whatever. It was all done manually, basically,
Mm.
with simple machines and human hands.
Mhm.
And you know, it's a wonder. It's truly a wonder of, like, you know, man's uh,
Mm.
willingness to glorify God with their talents.
Mm.
And it's truly breathtaking, and it's completely free of charge. As long as you, I mean, for you and I to get there, it would be
Yes.
quite costly just to fly there. But if you're already
Everywhere
there,
in
it's
Rome.
free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's good to know. And the comedian that you watch that
Hmm.
kind of gave the final nail to the coffin. The comedians often have the Catholic priest in their material. I remember hearing Joe
Yeah.
Rogan joke about priest, Ricky Gervais, uh, Bill Maher. They all
Hmm.
joked about Catholic priest, and we
Yeah.
don't cancel them for doing Catholic jokes.
Yeah. Especially in the English speaking world, anti-Catholicism is a very acceptable prejudice. You can say anything, or you can't say anything bad about any group, except you can freely
mm,
slander Catholics. Like that, that's an acceptable thing to do. And you know, there's a lot of historical reasonings for that. A lot of it is because of English, like, if you think about England's relationship with
mm,
Spain and France, two Catholic nations, and how England has been, for the most part, very hostile to those
mm,
nations, it's not hard to figure out why English speakers now, who still have very heavy influence from England, um, would be very anti-Catholic,
mm,
just because of that. So yeah, it's an acceptable prejudice. It's a very common joke,
mm.
and like you said, no, they're not going to get canceled because
Yeah.
it's an acceptable punching bag.
Yeah, but if these comedians that I mentioned, Joe Rogan, and Ricky
Mm-hmm.
Gervais, Bill Maher, they joked about the left, and they were tried to be canceled by the left for joking about them, but not for joking about Catholic priest.
Right.
Okay, so that's one part of your story. The other part is what I'm interested in
Okay.
is how did you decide to start making Catholic content?
So it was kind of an accident, really. So we mentioned a little bit how you've heard me on Pints for the
Mm,
Aquinas. So I'm
mm,
actually friends with Matt Frad, and I'm actually currently in the process of moving to Steubenville, Ohio.
mm,
So, but I've been a part of his locals community, and he put out, during a live stream, he asked people to share their conversion stories because he wanted to hear it. He said, just film a video, just post it here, and I'd love to see it. I'd love to get to know you guys. And I thought, hey, you know what? That's a fine idea. Why don't I do
wow.
that?
Mm,
So I didn't know anything about editing, and like, this video is still up on my channel. I didn't know
mm,
anything about editing, and I shot it like 8 times trying to get it to be a
mm,
coherent, a coherent story that I didn't need to edit or anything. So
mm,
I put it together. It's about an 8-minute video of me telling the story that I told at the beginning of here,
mhm, mhm,
and I what's the easiest way to share a video? Well, I'll just throw it up on YouTube, and
Mm,
I will, and I gave it a very generic title. I didn't make a thumbnail for it or anything. It's just
mm,
my conversion story. That's all it was.
mm.
And
Eh, By the
I was
way,
like, okay,
can we search it if we want to?
yeah,
I-
yeah, no, it's
it's
still
there.
available. Yeah, it's
Okay.
still publicly available. And I made it public because I thought that if it wasn't public, then it wouldn't be able to be found by anybody or whatever, even if I shared the link, because I didn't understand the difference between, private, unlisted, and public. And so it's just like, okay, yeah, it's public, whatever.
Okay. Go
And
ahead. Yeah.
I thought maximum 12 to 24 people might have watched it. And I go on with life. Well, I kept getting these notifications in my email and on YouTube that so and so has subscribed to your channel. What is happening here? Why are people all of a sudden subscribing? And I go and check the video that I had uploaded,
Mm,
and it had gotten like 1,500 views, which, for by YouTube standards, that's nothing. But for me, like, it's about 1,500 more people than I thought would ever watch it. And it kept going and going and going. I think as of today, it's sitting at about like 8,000 views or something like that.
mm,
And
mm. Wow.
I haven't checked it recently, but it's just what is going on here? Well, then one of the comments that I got on there was, "Hey, I really like your way of storytelling. You've got this
Mm,
dramatic and you're
mm,
funny." And I got to thinking, like, maybe I should start doing this. So I toyed around with it. I tried a few things that weren't too good. But then I started doing, because I've got a lot of admiration for Trent Horn. I started
mm,
trying to do like rebuttal type videos. And because I remember Trent made a point that the complex arguments that you really have to sink your teeth into and you really have to dive deep into are not those are not the arguments that you're facing in your day-to-day life.
mm,
The stuff that you're going to face in your day-to-day life is what we would call low-hanging fruit.
mm,
So the easy
mm,
stuff you can eat, it's easily
mm,
debunked. And it's actually the stuff that I believe that kept me out of the church. And I
mm,
got to thinking, like, well, hey, there's a ton of these videos out there that are anti-Catholic that are not well researched that I can rebut, I can debunk just, on the
mhm,
off
mhm.
the cuff. So I was just like, huh, let's do that. So I started doing more of those, and I've started doing them live, and it just kind of developed into just doing what I love. Like I've had an interest in apologetics ever since I converted. And I did a lot of research in what it takes to make a successful YouTube channel. And one of the pieces of advice that I see repeated a lot are that as long as you're having a good time, you're
Yeah.
heading the right direction. So, and you know what? I'm still having fun with it. I really enjoy it. So
Yes. That's good to
that's
hear.
how, yeah. So that's how I got involved with it.
Cool, cool. Sometimes people ask, or sometimes I ask, what do we, and let's call ourselves independent, indie Catholic content
Mhm.
creators. I hope that's an accurate description to
Yeah.
what we do. So, what do we bring to the table when there are so many professional authors, apologists, speakers who have larger reach than us, who are doing so well? So, uh, what what do you think do we bring to the table?
Well, so Brian Holdsworth has this his group, they call them the reinforcements.
Mm,
And this is also, he kind of helped form my thoughts on this as well,
mm,
because the big sophisticated arguments, the Trent Horns, the Jimmy Akins, the Scott Hahns of the
mm,
world are tackling those. And thank
mm,
God, praise God that we've got the brightest minds on the
mm.
planet alive today
Yes.
that are tackling these issues. But what that is, what that kind of does leave is the bulk of the work that you and I
Mm-hmm.
you and I are capable of handling. And you, dear viewer, like, if you're a
Mm, yeah.
practicing Catholic, you probably are also capable of handling this.
Mm,
If you can answer questions about the faith, you can do apologetics.
mm.
Um, so that's what I think is really something that we do bring to the table. The other thing is
Cool.
that, especially whenever your channel is small,
Mm,
you have a greater ability to have a more personal touch. So Trent Horn is I love the man to death, but he's very introverted, and you're not going to talk to him. He's got like his two friends, and
Good
those two
point.
friends are all
Yes,
he wants to
yes,
talk to.
yes. Good point.
Matt Fradd is out very similar as well. He's a very he
Mm-hmm.
out off the camera. He's a very quiet man. He likes quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And but then like a guy like me, like, oh, I love talking to people, like off
Yes,
camera,
yes.
on camera. And so people like me, so I've got a Discord channel that
Mm-hmm.
people, it's free, anybody can join it, and they're able to ask questions with some other creators, and we actually have a sense of community through this channel, and people don't have to pay to get in there, and they're able
Mm-hmm.
to ask questions, and sometimes it's a little bit more human. So I think that the small creators are in
Mm-hmm.
a unique position to give a more human connection to what would otherwise be a completely detached online experience, like you would for one of these big creators. So,
Cool, cool. And evangelization should be the norm for us Catholics, and we
oh
should
yeah,
find ways on how to evangelize. I think that's one thing we should get from our Protestant brothers and sisters, because for the
mm-hmm.
Protestants, it's always in their minds to evangelize. During the age of discovery, 1600, year 1600 or 1500, uh, evangelization is what's driving them to sail the treacherous seas and go to undiscovered lands,
Mm-hmm.
and they even sail ships and tread dangerous territories. Now you can evangelize in the comfort of your sofa. And but,
Yeah,
but,
well,
but yeah, only a few people are driven to do that. So we're calling people to share the faith.
yeah. And I will say this, that is a dual-edged sword though, so it cuts both ways. We are able to evangelize from our couches, but one thing that I have seen, and it's something that I catch myself doing all the time, it's very easy to work without charity.
Mm.
And that's
Hmm.
really, really dangerous. And
Yes.
it's really tempting.
Yes.
And so it's easy to win an argument in a Facebook
Mm-hmm.
comments section, but it's not so easy to treat that person with the love and dignity
Mm-hmm.
that they deserve as a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
So, I will say that'll be my encouragement to anybody who's listening, is that yes, you may you may be engaging with with these people online, but you cannot forget the charity. And that's one thing that I actually do really like about the community and that human aspect, is that actually it's super effective in evangelization, because you can actually form relationships with these people, you can become their friends, because it's so much easier to lead a friend to Christ than it is to lead a stranger to Christ.
Mm-hmm. Okay, tell us about your content. You have a regular segment. You mentioned this a bit, a few times. Low hanging fruit. So what is
Mm.
it all about?
Yeah, so low hanging fruit is just I find an anti Catholic video where people are
Mm,
making terrible arguments about the church. They're just repeating the same tired falsehoods that, we've all heard 100 times. Anybody who's read a book since the 90s knows that those are not true. The
mm,
smarter Protestant apologists do not engage in these. Um, and if you've got a few frequent flyers, and you kind of figure out who runs in what circles and who engages in what. It's like, oh hey, you said this line, but I know you didn't make it up. You heard so and so say it, or you read this book and got it
mm.
from there. And so that's a fun one.
Nice.
I'm trying to change that one up a little bit, because I was talking about that charity aspect, and it's like I don't know if this is actually helping or if this is
Mm,
educating Catholics. So I'm trying to figure that one out a little bit better, because one of the things that I also do, and I really do enjoy, is actually having people who disagree with me on the channel.
nice.
And because it's so easy to strawman somebody's position if they're not there to correct you on it.
Mm,
And it's so much better whenever we can actually talk to each other, and I can actually learn what they actually believe. So that way I can,
mm.
debunk it better.
Yeah.
But if it's just like, well, he believes in this silly thing, and then he comes back and says, actually, I don't believe in that silly thing. It's much more complicated than that. well, then that's a, I think that's a much more productive conversation. And, can those kinds of conversations are more likely to lead to people to Christ.
Mm.
So,
And I understand your dilemma in low hanging fruit, because sometimes
mhm.
when you talk about something, you you put jokes, you put like
Mhm.
comedy. And the thing about comedy is it's an offensive art form. Sometimes
Yes.
jokes are like, the more offensive is, the funnier it is, and you have
Yeah,
to balance it. uh but if you don't put the comedy, it might end up being bland.
exactly. Then nobody watches it.
Nobody watches it. So there's this balance that you have to tread. So and it's not because we're like without charity, but
Right.
and sometimes uh, there are things that we can uh, laugh about. It's part of creativity to
Yeah.
to put those things. Have you ever encountered uh, the content creators block, like the time of release? You still don't have anything in the pipeline. What do you do during those times when
Oh,
you have mental blocks?
yeah. Well, so because a lot of my content is basically just reaction stuff.
Mm, mm,
I don't like to call it that, but it's basically I
mm,
play a Protestant video, I respond to Protestant video, or even
mm,
atheist video or whatever. So as long as I can find one of those, I'm good. A lot of people in my Discord community actually will send me things and say like, "Hey, you should do a response to this," and I will go, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then I just do it as a live stream because
mm,
live is
mm.
just so easy. You just hit play and you go.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot easier on me. Although sometimes like there was I think my longest live stream was like 3.5 hours or something like that, and that
Wow.
was Yeah, that was exhausting. But and I don't know how many people are actually going to watch all of that. So,
Mm,
but and then occasionally some of the stuff that I do, the most popular video that I ever did
mhm.
was I did a fake conspiracy video surrounding
Whoa.
Matt Fradd, and he holds up that painting of
Yeah.
Modest Mussorgsky, and I did a silly bit there. It was funny because whenever because I was there in studio last time Trent was on Pints with Aquinas, I was actually in the
Mhm.
studio,
Oh, cool.
and there's a couple of times, like if you watch there, whenever Trent announced that he's going to be debating Mike Gendron, I was in the corner just going like, yes. And because Mike Gendron is one of those frequent flyers that I was talking about, that
Uh-huh.
he has been he's made an entire career off of just attacking Catholicism with terrible
Mm,
arguments.
mm.
And yeah, I'm not going to get into that, but like Trent's going to be debating him soon, and I was so excited to hear that. And it's funny because if you go back and watch the Pints interview, he's like, "Oh yeah, Kyle's in the corner going like, yes."
Was that the one about Destiny, the Destiny debate?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I was in Steubenville at the time, and yeah. So and then Matt invited me. He was saying, "Oh, would you like to sit in on the studio?" I was like, "Yes." I didn't talk or anything because it's like this isn't my show. This isn't my
Yes,
appearance.
yes.
I'll just try to be a fly on the wall. But I couldn't really contain myself whenever I heard that he was going to be debating Mike Gendron. So,
Cool.
but yeah. So for me, it's like block creators block. It's like, well, I guess I don't really deal with that because a lot of my stuff is low effort. So,
Cool, cool. Well, what's the most memorable episode that you recorded?
my absolute favorite one to record was my interview with Father John Brown,
Mm,
Jesuit priest. It wasn't a very popular interview, but it was, I, I have not, I was going through a pretty stressful time in my life. We just found out that we've got our fifth kid on the way. And I think Father John is like number six of like 11 kids or something.
mm, mm,
And he it was just such an uplifting experience. I felt so much better after that interview. It's been very calm since then.
mm,
Or yeah, it was very needed for me, even though it wasn't that great. But Father John, if you go in any place whatsoever, um, if you go anywhere, he will uh he'll be in the comments section. So He's always commenting on the Pints with Aquinas videos. He's always commenting on reason and theology. And I see
Oh
his
wow.
comment show up on like every Council of Trent video too. So, but he's such a wonderful man, wonderful priest, and that was one of the that was a very needed interview for me, even though it wasn't very popular. But that's by far my favorite.
That's good to hear. Mine is with Amber Rose.
Oh,
The reason is because like I'm not sure if I told you this off air or here
mm-hmm.
in Cam. Whenever I talk to Catholic authors, speakers, and apologists, you put your game face on. You bring your A game. But when you talk to like to yourself like and
Mm-hmm.
Amber, you can be laid back. The conversation
Right.
could be free flowing, and I enjoyed these kinds of interview, like yourself and
Yeah.
Amber. Do you get your regular share of bashers?
Oh yeah.
Which content got the most negative comment?
Oh, so okay, well, here we go. This is pre-recorded, so you can edit this part out if you want. But there
No,
are
I
two
won't.
of the most huh?
I
Okay,
won't
good.
take this out.
Okay, cool. The two most cantankerous groups, or the most vitriolic groups, are going to be the traditionalists
Mm,
and the Protestants.
mm,
So I am not an anti-traditionalist. I actually go to the traditional Latin Mass. I go to an Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest oratory. So I don't
mm,
hate the Latin Mass at all. I love it. But
mm,
there's a lot of problems in that community that I think need to be addressed. And every
mm,
time I think that every time I choose to address one of those issues, I get all sorts of nonsensical attacks or
mm,
whatever. But
mm,
by far the most common are the Protestants. And what's
mm,
really funny is that if you do it for long enough, if you like try to like tackle different Protestant ideas, you get those frequent flyers. And not only that, but you find out that these people like just copy and paste the same comments.
mm, mm,
And it's just like, and then you'll try to respond to them and try to engage with them. It's like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but they'll
mm.
never respond to you. So
I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like, so you get that, and then occasionally, yeah, the atheists will show up and be like, religion's
Mm.
dumb, haha. And one of my favorite responses to that is just like, oh man, just try not to cut yourself being so edgy. Um, and
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, of course you're going to get criticisms on any public platforms, and I'm sure another way that you can shut down a lot of these problems is
Mm.
invite them onto the channel. Say,
Mm.
okay,
Cool.
because most of these guys, they do not share their real names and they do not share their faces.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's easy to criticize if you're anonymous.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I
Mm.
tell people, like, I tell you what, you can you can come onto my channel and we can have this conversation like two normal human beings, not just text on the screen, and do
Mm.
that. And so far, I've not. A few people have taken me up on it. Um, and they've always been really good
Mm.
conversations, actually. And I actually had one guy, John Newby, who's such a kind man. I have nothing bad to say about him. He's a police officer here in the U.S. and he's a Protestant, and he actually emailed me asking if he could present his case against the papacy on my channel, and just wanted to get my thoughts on it. And I thought it was he had a presentation. I made some commentary, and I thought it was a really that was a really uplifting conversation. I don't believe he drinks, but I told him like I would happily buy you a beer anytime. So I hope one day to meet John in person.
Cool. People's
Yeah.
attitude change when they're not in the comment section. Actually, whenever I talk to people on what's the best way to evangelize, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually in person, face to
Yes.
face, because people are less combative face to
Mm-hmm.
face. They at least we people try to be civil when you're face to face. The
Right.
next thing is Zoom. The next,
Yep.
if you can't meet face to face, at least talk to that person on a meeting or a forum
Mm-hmm.
with cameras on, because at least you see the verbal
Yep.
cues, and
Well,
it still end up civil. Yeah.
yeah. And so I once read an article and it's really interesting. So I want you to think about the bad guys from Star Wars
Mm.
Think about the bad guys from GI Joe. Think about the bad guys from Halo or
Mm.
something like that. And that they've all got something in common in that the enemy does not have human faces. So
Wow.
Halo, they're aliens and you can kill them and it's fine because they're not humans and you can kill as many of them as you want. Star Wars, the stormtroopers wear helmets. They do not have
Wow.
faces. GI Joe, the
Cobra
Cobra
Commander.
guys, like
Yeah.
yeah, they all wear masks. They do not have faces, so it's okay to kill them by the thousands or whatever. So whenever we have these communications online and it's just text on a screen, we're not registering that as a human. So it's okay to be hostile to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why whenever you restore the humanity, you restore that human connection face to face. Well, especially face to face is great because you're going to be very polite to somebody whenever they're within strangling distance. And you're gonna be a lot more polite whenever the guy that you're talking to can punch you in the mouth. And then even here, like in these
Mm.
Zoom meetings, I can see your face. I can clearly see that you are a human being made in the image of God. And and there's an element of justice that demands my respect and love to you. And so that's one of my recommendations is, hey folks, if you're in one of these discussions, there's a disagreement, you see it's not going anywhere, invite them onto something where you can restore some humanity into the conversation.
All right. Kyle, this is my final question. I'm enjoying our
Mhm.
conversation, but I cannot keep you long because I know you're busy. You have a pregnant wife to attend to. What other YouTube channels do you enjoy watching? Catholic or non-Catholic?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Anything you could
So
recommend? Yep.
I have to plug the Council of Trent. So we're coming up really
Mm,
close on hitting 100,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed to the Council of Trent, please do so now.
yep.
The second one I'm going to have to plug is going to be Pints for the Aquinas.
Mm,
Matt Frad and Thursday are doing some really cool stuff, and any bit of support really means a lot to them.
mm.
And then let's see here. Okay, so those are the two obvious candidates. Um, you know what? I'll go ahead and plug Drew the Catholic too. He's a very
Okay.
small channel,
Cool.
but Drew is such
Yes.
a wonderful guy. And behind the scenes, he actually helps a lot of us small creators with our audio, lighting, and video stuff.
Mm.
So Drew the Catholic is another really cool guy. Non-Catholic, I watch a lot of chess videos. So there's a few channels like Gotham Chess and there's one that's it's called Chess Simp, and he
Mhm.
does these silly chess challenges, and they're just really funny. My kids really enjoy watching them. So, but yeah, those are the channels that I would recommend.
Cool. Are you into the conservative media stuff?
Oh
Daily
yeah,
Wire, Jordan Peterson.
yeah. So I don't pay a lot of attention to politics,
Mm.
mostly because on all the issues that I need to know about, really, I've kind of already got my mind made up. So whenever I get a little bit more serious about it about a week before the actual election. But I'll listen to mostly
Mm.
Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh.
The,
And
the
then
Catholic guys in the Daily Wire.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a little bit of Candace Owens too, but that's only because of George Farmer. Her husband's very devoutly
Yeah.
Catholic,
Yeah.
and hey, there's some cool stuff in the works because Trent Horn is going to be debating, or at least dialoguing, with Allie Beth Stuckey of the Daily Wire.
I heard that.
So
That
yeah, so
that'd
that's
be
exciting.
interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes like that, I'll get my news through them, but for the most part, there's this line in this Cardinal Seurat's book titled the Power of Silence, and it was the abbot of La Grande Chartreuse in France, and he was talking about how of all the monks there, he's the only one who gets the paper, and he reads the news and whatnot. And he said, because at the time Syria was the big conflict at the time, and he said, "My heart breaks for the people of Syria and that civil war. However, I have no power over it. Nations are not calling me, asking for my opinions of what they should
Mm.
do. And he's like, but as father of this house, like it's these monks that I need to care for. So we will pray for this situation, but we're also not going to dwell on it for very long.
Mm.
And so I try to operate with that as much as I can, because, as a husband and a father, there are no politicians that really listen to me past my vote.
Mm.
And, and my vote is one of millions. So, or one of thousands if it's local. And I, try to keep that in mind and try to balance that. So I do kind of have a general sense of what's going on, but, I'd much rather dive into the faith more
Mm.
than be perfectly aware. If I were ever in a position of leadership or a greater position of influence, that'll probably change, though.
All right. I know I said that's the last question. There's one thing that came to my
Go ahead.
mind. It slipped when you mentioned the traditionalist, and there's this infight in our church, the radical
Mhm.
traditionalist, and the other side, which some may say they're hyper papalist, and
Yeah.
the Scott Hahn issue, Bishop Barron
Oh, yeah.
issue, and as long as this is going, it would be hard. In my opinion, it would be hard to convert other
Yeah.
Protestants, because who are you converting them into? What
Yeah.
side, right? So, what's your opinion on that?
Oh, goodness. So I think that entire fight is centered around losing sight of what is actually important. The sectarian, forming groups and stuff like that, that was never something that Jesus
Mm.
intended. That's so whenever we start dividing ourselves, when we start dividing the church into camps, that's a problem.
Mm.
And so we need to refocus more on Christ and the unity that he has with the Father and the Holy Spirit, and try to emulate that within the church. And we need to focus on virtue more than anything
Mm.
else.
Mm.
So, if you're starting to decide, if you're upset about somebody associating with this person, like listen, this isn't high school. We're not forming cliques. We're not
Mm.
we're not doing that. That is not anything that Jesus required us to do. Now, there's some fraternal corrections going on
Mm.
and
Mm.
whatnot, but I mean, my opinion is that I don't know if I've ever corrected a stranger and him thanking me later. I don't think that's
Mm.
ever happened outside of a military context where
Mm.
it's like, hey, you've got a button unbuttoned or something like that. I was in the military for a little bit, and he was like, hey, your thing's unbuttoned. Oh, thanks. And they'll button it. That's it. But if it's
Mm.
anything that actually matters, I don't know if I don't know if any of these guys have ever done that. So if you see that, I would say focus on virtue. So specifically charity. Charity is the one you
Mm.
need to focus on the most.
Yes.
And remember moderation.
Mm.
You don't. We're not trying to pick the right side, because the only right side is Jesus Christ,
Yes.
and you need to follow Him with that. Now, I will touch on this though a little bit, because I think it should not be scandalous to say that Pope Francis says a lot of really confusing things.
Mm.
Or like he will say something and then the media will add their own confusion into it.
Mm.
And for that, my response is you need to really consider what your relationship to the Pope is. What level of respect, what level of obedience do you actually owe him?
Mm.
And a lot of that can be answered if you just ask the question of, is he talking to me? So
Mm.
if the Pope is writing to, you know, Catholics in Greece, well,
Mm.
he's not talking to you.
Mm.
If he's talking to your bishop, he's not talking to you.
Mhm.
Talking to priests, once again, unless you're a priest, he's not talking to you. So I would say to the average layman, there's a meme that's out there. It's a fake quote, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in it, and that's one can cultivate a medieval sense of piety by having no idea what His Holiness in Rome is doing.
Mm.
And if it weren't for the internet, if it weren't for television,
Yes. For
none of us would know. You would barely know what the Pope's name was.
yeah.
And
And
you know, and
for the most of history, we don't know what the
yeah,
Pope is doing.
exactly. And it's just like, believe it or not, what the Pope had for breakfast this morning has no bearing on what your responsibilities are. Now, it's just like if he's addressing something to you, chances are it will be filtered down and it will come through your bishop and your priest. So at that point, then be concerned and like have the level of, but that's what our priests and bishops are for, is they are, mediators a little bit for the Pope, and they're there to help teach and clarify and stuff. So, but if you've got, over, 1.3 billion people going directly to the Pope for all instruction, that's too much. You can't do that. And he can't even give effective pastoral guidance over that. It's impossible, because everybody, the US and the Philippines, two different nations, two different cultures.
Yes.
We can't do everything the same way. Thank God we have bishops that are there to guide us and who are more in tune with the cultures of the area, because what works in the Philippines probably won't work in the US and vice versa. So that's my take on it, is just figure out what the actual role of the Pope is, and then figure out what your role is in life. Operate with that, and don't get bogged down in all the infighting. And if somebody's trying to come into the church, I would recommend that it's like, whose side should I join? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. That is your guy. That is the guy that you need to go to his corner. Not Michael Lofton's, not Kennedy Hall's, and I would assume, my charitable assumption is that both of those guys would agree with me in saying that, I'm not important. Jesus Christ is important. So eyes on the Lord and keep moving that way.
All right. And I think the church needs prayers more than ever.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I guess I'll add one more little thing, is that 30 minutes in prayer is far more valuable than 30 minutes of argumentation. And if you are not praying for the person that you are trying to convert, you're not going to convert them.
All right, Kyle. Thanks for accepting my invite. We've come to the end of the episode. Thank you for what you do, and keep it up. Don't be a stranger in the internet when I send you a comment in your page.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, you know what? I'd love to have you on my channel before, just so we can figure out what's going on in the Philippines.
All right, no problem. We can arrange that. Okay, please invite the audience to your work, and where can we follow you on social media?
Yeah, so against my better judgment, I started a Twitter account. So if you just look up K Whittington YT, or just search for Kyle Whittington, you'll probably find me. I don't know. And then, of course, there's my channel. It's just my name, Kyle Whittington. I tried to name it something clever, and that didn't work. So I guess I'm either humble or just a narcissist. I haven't figured it out yet. So that's where I'm doing that. And then, of course, the two channels that I do work with is Council of Trent and Pints with Aquinas. So, please subscribe to all three of those channels.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Kyle. Please pray for us here in the Philippines.
Of course.
Okay. This has been another episode of the J. Aruga Show. At the end of the day, it will be night. Goodbye. Hi, this is J. Aruga of the J. Aruga Show. If you like what you just saw, please consider subscribing and smash that like button. We'll need all of your help to take back the culture from this ideological colonization of the West. Thank you.